Precious Tripoli. Of course, it's a very wet Tuesday morning. We'll start off with Vanguard this morning. Vanguard is leading with IGP kicks as ex-president orders back state police. Rider says Nigeria not ready, mature for state police, and that's coming from IGP. We can't manage internal security without state police, and that's coming from Jonathan. Our governors must be transparent, and that's coming from General Abubakar. It must be free from politics, ethno-religious extremism, and that's coming from Akpabio. My resolve to enhance Nigeria's security unwavering, and that's coming from TINUBU. Also, we can see at Africa Counter-Terrorism meeting in Abuja. Ondo guber, aspirant kicks as Aiyedatiwa extend only branch to co-contestants. You can read that on page 14. Coastal Superhighway Project, misplaced priority, and that's coming from Obi. Terrorism is evil, must be banished in Africa. TINUBU, we've resumed prosecution of Boko Haram suspect, and that is from Ribado. Stories above 200 billion naira intervention fund. Federal government begins disbursement to MSMEs, manufacturers. How gunmen killed Babcock varsity lecturer abducted 2 in Ogun. Okwama Ewu, help, we're dying in the forest. Displaced resident cry to Borivori. And lastly, on the front page of Vanguard, court vacates order suspending Ganduje. We take a look at the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian is leading with recapitalization. Insurers, banks compete for scarce fund under new NICOM. Government considered 18 as minimum age for admission seekers. Federal government plans regulatory intervention as fiber repairs cost telcos 27 billion naira. Federal government to resell discos under banks AMCON in 3 months. Cooking gas price spikes further as Nigerians struggle with food inflation. Controversy trail rivers politics as lawmakers override Fubara's assent pass LGA bill. IGP enters TINUBU says Nigeria not mature, ready for state police. Terrorists killed 15 abducted married women in Katsina. And that's how we can take on the Guardian. Take a look at the Nation. The Nation is leading with Salami, Jonathan orders OK State Police. IG defers. Rider says it is non-negotiable, says ex-president. Government to sell Abuja, Ibadan, Bini, Kaduna, Kano discos. Banks, AMCON lacks capacity. Gains of IMF World Bank meeting by Finance Ministry. Stories above. Fugitive of Binance Chief Ajawala to be deported from Kenya. Illegal foreign funds mining fueling terrorism, says TINUBU. Nigeria should ignore downgrading of status by IMF, says UK envoy. And lastly, on the front page of the Nation, aspirants file appeal against Aiyedatiwa's nomination. We take a look at the Punch newspaper. The Punch is leading with no Nigerian shopper. A Chinese operator risks sanction as federal government shuts Abuja supermarket. Rider says consumer agency plans Wednesday. Tribunal says CCTV footage shows owner fled Monday morning. 4 children die in abandoned car in Niger. You can read that on pages 4 and 5. Delta diverts Lagos flight to Lume after passengers' death. Thunderstorm. Stories above. Naira rebound. Rice falls to 67,000 naira in Lagos. Abuja cheaper at borders. TINUBU blames illegal mining for terrorism funding. Federal government to unbundle 11 discos, orders sale of 4. Lastly, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, IG warns of governors' excesses as federal government insists on state police. And that's how we can take on the front pages of the papers. Join us after the break. We'll be right back. Alright, welcome back. If you're just joining me still today in the news on Vanguard Live, I am Precious Tripoli. Joining me to talk about some of the stories on the front pages of the papers this morning is Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher of Liquidity Today, Ikeja Today, and Lekki Today. It's good to have you join me this morning, sir.
Always a pleasure to be here. Good morning to all our viewers.
Alright, let's delve in. And of course, it's on state policing, and the IGP, Kayode Betoku, has said that Nigeria is not ready or mature for it because it is open to abuse by governors, and some people might use it as a tool of oppression. How do you react to this?
Well, that has always been a concern. I mean, I don't think per se the IGP was saying no to state police. I think it was just warning about the fact that we might not be ripe for it at this time due to certain concerns. Those concerns have always been prevalent, and I even beg to say that even under the current structure of a federal police, the issues he raised are still very prevalent. I mean, issues of governors using the police to have their way. It happens even now under the federal system. You see governors getting people arrested, maybe bloggers or whatever, for writing things unfavorable to them. Maybe they didn't defame or slander them, but the fact that the governor doesn't like what a particular blogger wrote about him, he will call the commissioner of police in the state and have the person picked up and arrested. So abuses of power are already occurring anyway, even under the federal system. So I don't doubt that they will continue under a state policing system. For me, the greater issue is funding. I worry about the fact that if we have state police now, how will they pay for those police? I mean, many of the states till now can't pay the minimum wage. If you now have state police, there are issues of you have to buy equipment for them, you have to buy guns, you have to buy ammunition, you have to train them periodically, you have to pay salaries, you have to build barracks for them, you have to have life insurance, hazard insurance. There is such the pension, there's such a humongous amount of money involved in having your own police that I don't think more than maybe 2 or 3 or 4 states can even afford to do it. And even then it'll be a drain on their resources. Well, I've heard a counter argument that, well, once we have state police, the money that's been allocated to the federal police, the Nigeria police, that money will be cut and can be shared between the 36 states for their own policing. But it doesn't happen that way, because it's not like the federal police will be disbanded completely. It may be reduced, but we'll still have federal police because we need oversight over the state police. And then there are some crimes that are federal in nature, like kidnapping. When they kidnap somebody in one state and move that person to another state, is it the state police from this state that's going to go there and go and investigate? So there are certain things that are federal crimes, like money laundering, for example. You can't trace money the way it moves all over the place. You can't trace it as a state or local police because it's moving across borders, sometimes not just state borders but international borders. So you need federal police for that. So even if we do state police, there will still be a need to have federal police, and they will also run costs. They will also have a budget. So even if we reduce the size of the federal police and decentralize it to state police, the federal police will still require a lot of resources. So how much money will they be able to save from reducing the size of the federal police that they now be able to share to the states and tell the states to now begin to pay for the state police? So that to me is a concern. But the other thing I got out of yesterday's event was that clearly there's a fundamental philosophical difference on this issue between the president and the IGP. Of course, the IGP is the commander, he's the sector person. The president is the overall head. To me, the fact that a key member of his cabinet can disagree with him, maybe it means President TINUBU is open. It tells me that he's open to argument. He's open to people, because many leaders, those who follow them or those who work for them, they are yes men. They kowtow to whatever the head wants. The fact that the IGP can openly disagree with the president, I like it. I think it's good for democracy. I think it means we have a leader who is open to ideas, who is ready to debate and deal with issues on the merits. So he allows dissenting opinion, which is not something you see very often. So I think that's a very good step as far as I can see.
All right. You made mention of the fact that we're still battling with welfare challenges with our own central police. What ways do you think that we can actually look into? Because it's been a conversation for the longest, on how the police can be structured so we will not have some of these things that we get to see on the road. What ways do you think that the government can actually look at the welfare challenges of our central police?
Well, Lagos has a good model. They set up something called the Lagos Security Trust Fund several years ago, I think 2 or 3 previous administrations, to where they had corporate bodies donate monies to this security trust fund that the government now uses to support the activities of the police, not to pay their salaries or anything. I think Lagos State may give an allowance. The federal government still pays salary. But I think from that trust fund, Lagos gives a little additional allowance to each police officer. But they also use it to buy vehicles for them, to buy arms for them. So in other words, you'll find that like the RRS, Rapid Response Squad in Lagos, the vehicles they use, they are new. The vehicles they use, they are a different model from the ones you usually see the police using. That is coming from the funding of the Security Trust Fund. That's why you see that crime is very low in Lagos, because crime fighting is well funded from that security trust fund. The police are in better shape. Their equipment is newer. They're better. They have more arms and stuff like that. So other states might be able to want to copy that template and see if that model will work for them as well. Because remember, it's to a corporation's benefit to have a crime-free area for them to operate their businesses. Is good for their profits. Remember in the days when banks used to be robbed every day, next thing you hear armed robbers, they throw a grenade and blow up the security doors, go inside, cart away money, probably kill people, maim people, put the fear of God in people. So banks are the number one supporters of that security trust fund. And I'm not sure we've had an incident of bank robbery in Nigeria in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, primarily because that security trust fund is working. And like I said, the banks are at the forefront because it's to their benefit. They've had no incidents. Other corporations too, for their businesses to flow smoothly, for their profits to increase, for them to operate seamlessly, they also support this trust fund. So that's one way that other states can look to attract the kind of funds that will speak to the welfare of their officers.
All right. What are the implications if we keep managing our internal security and do not consider state policing?
Well, the police, which is charged with internal security, they've been stretched so thin, and they are in situations where they are finding themselves fighting an enemy they can't handle. So guess what we've had to do? We've had to call the army in to fight Boko Haram, to fight terrorism, to fight banditry, to fight farmer herder crisis, to fight militancy in the Niger Delta, all the areas that the police are supposed to handle. They've been stretched too thin, and in many cases have not been able to cope with the demands of the particular situation or problem. So the army is coming. Now that the army is coming, what that means is that what the army is supposed to be doing is left unattended. The territorial integrity of the country that they're supposed to defend, our borders, external aggression, all those things, is getting short shrift because the army is too occupied with fighting internal crisis. So we need to find a better way for police to be more effective. One of the things the IGP said yesterday was that let the road safety corps and civil defense be subsumed into the police force. Let them become a part of the police. It brings more personnel. It creates better command and control. Everything is centralized. We have more men. We can cover bigger areas because the police is clearly inadequately able to cope. It is not adequately funded, it doesn't have enough personnel, there's not enough training, it doesn't have enough technology, it doesn't have enough equipment. So these are all some of the challenges. Now, if we do state police, yes, a lot of crime is localized. And truth be told, if you have police people coming from the very communities that are being policed, there's better information flow, they're familiar with the terrain, they know who the criminals are, people confide in them more. So there's a lot of advantages, don't get me wrong, to the issue of state police. Why, for example, should a commissioner of police wait for his orders to come from Abuja before he can act on a local issue? So I don't doubt that state police is a good thing and that it is a necessity. The question is, are all the elements in place for it to be done properly? Now, I think there are pros, there are good reasons for it, and there are good reasons against it. I remember a speech that former Governor Fashola gave several years ago, and he says, okay, everybody's saying governors will be repressive and abuse of power with this police. He said, but when you wait, if we don't do these things, human lives that are at stake. So which is more important, that you save human lives or that the governor abuses power? Well, I think that if a governor abuses power, it could also lead to loss of human life. So you just have to weigh the two and say, look, there are good reasons for and there are good reasons against. Which one will work better for us at this point in time? I think that state police will come. But before it comes, I think there has to be a proper template in place, operational guidelines, issues of funding. There are a lot of things to consider. It's not what you can just wake up, pass a law, and tomorrow it starts happening. So there are a lot of things that need to be put in place first. I think the conversation should continue, and perhaps they can invite some constitutional experts, some policing experts in some places where it's been done before. Go to America, go and study how they do it there. Set up a panel and things like that, and let's do a lot of homework. It's not a matter of 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month or 2 months to get this thing done.
All right, moving on. What's your take on the Ondo APC primaries, the protests over the conducted primaries, and the governor now saying he's extending only branch to his co-contestants?
Well, I didn't expect it to go any differently. That's the truth, because that's just the way we run elections in Nigeria. Have you ever seen any election that's been any different from that? Especially, look, we're talking about these are the primaries of a party. We're not even in the general election yet. This is just the primaries, and we've already had protests, skirmishes. Some of the co-contestants are crying foul that it was unfair. One lady aspirant said there was no election at all. It didn't happen. Well, the governor cleared 16 out of 18 local governments. He was far, the person who came second was far behind him. So what he has done in his acceptance speech has reached out to all those others and said, let's band together and improve the state. First of all, he believes that he needs their support to win at the general election, because remember, a party divided against itself cannot stand. So he needs to rally all those people together so that all of the APC people, even those who didn't vote for him in the primary, can all come together and work for his victory at the general election. So he's just being a typical politician. It's nothing different from what we've seen in the past. It's not different from what we're going to see in Edo in a couple of weeks. I think that he had the advantage of incumbency. He was the deputy governor up until a couple of months ago, and unfortunately his superior, the former governor, passed away and he became governor. So he's been governor for a couple of weeks. For a couple of months. He's had the opportunity to prove himself, and also he was acting governor twice before when his superior was ill. So he's had the opportunity to ingratiate himself to the populace and make himself popular, make himself well liked, and also he's got the reins of power. He's got the treasury of the state, at his beck and call. So clearly, it was his race to lose. He had the advantage, and of course, he took advantage of his advantage.
So moving on, the president yesterday at the African high-level counter-terrorism meeting has described terrorism as an imported evil that must be banished from Africa. And, he cited illegal mining as one of, the causes of terrorism. What are your thoughts on the president's speech?
Yeah, I think this illegal mining thing has been underrated a lot in Nigeria. I think we've not paid enough attention to it, and it's a real menace, because there is, our focus has always been oil and gas, but we have so many other natural resources that are quite valuable, if not as valuable, maybe even more valuable than oil and gas. And we've paid scant attention to it over the years, but there's some foreigners who have recognized the value and have been filtering into the country over time to come and exploit our resources. And of course, in collaboration with some locals, the thinking is that the economic impetus for terrorism is based on this mad scramble for our natural resources. So what the president is saying is that it is fueled by foreigners. They fund it, even though they may use locals, right, as their bagmen to do the henchman's work. It is still foreigners. It is still Western powers. It is Asian powers. It is those who are exploiting our resources, who are seeking to get it out of the ground. Whereas, the funny thing is that the same way that happened with oil and gas, governments will collaborate and cooperate with any international organization that expresses an interest to do a JV, joint venture with the government, to exploit our minerals. A bit to our advantage, because we will get share of the money, they will get share of the money. They just need to do it legitimately. The reason they've been sneaking in to come and do it and funding terrorism with it is because they don't have to share the proceeds with the government. They don't have to share, so they get a larger profit. They just pay the bandits pittance. But if they did it properly and they set up proper mines and proper exploration and we exploited it to its maximum value, they probably could get as much money as they're getting doing it illegally. But the thing about it is, it has become so entrenched. This way of doing it has been years and years and years in the making. It's been easy pickings for them, to where they're so used to these things coming in easily over the transom, just gold, diamonds, all kinds of coal and bauxite and different precious minerals have just been mined and taken out of the country illegally to profit other countries. We're not getting anything out of it. So what the president was basically saying was that investigations have shown that this is what is breeding terrorism in this country. It is that scramble. It's not ideological. Remember Boko Haram, when it started, it was behind an ideology where they were saying Western education is bad. We don't want any of our followers to be indoctrinated in the Western culture. That was an ideological war. But ever since then, this thing has become an economic war, to where it's the profits that are at stake, and it is terrorism that is being used to mine those profits out of the ground. So that's what the president was saying. Yes.
All right, moving on now. Peter Obi has described the Lagos Calabar Coastal Superhighway project as misplaced priority. According to him, he was saying that you need to consider the humongous cost, and that it would take time to complete it as well, and the fact that there are more deserving dilapidated roads that require immediate attention. What do you make of what he said?
Well, it depends on what side. It depends on what side of the fence you sit. There are some people who will agree with him and say, "Look, complete all the abandoned projects and don't start something this major, this big when you have so many." Look at Lagos Ibadan Expressway. They've been working on it for 15, 20 years. We thought it was finished. I mean, it's much better now. I was on it last week, but it's still not finished, right? And they've been at it 15 years. So there are some who will agree with Peter Obi. Complete all your ongoing or abandoned road projects before you start something new, especially something that big. Lagos Ibadan is only 150 kilometers and they haven't finished in 15 years. 700 kilometers Lagos Calabar, and you say you do it in 8 years. How realistic is that? So Peter Obi is saying basically that why throw a whole lot of money? I think government has said is put down 1 trillion. Initially, when they talked about this road, it was going to be a public-private participation where the contractor was going to fund it and then make his money back from tolling the road, like that. Now all of a sudden government has said, well, we are paying for part of it or paying for all of it. They put up 1 trillion naira already. What Peter will be saying is that road should not be a priority now. Even despite the advantages that the federal government is propagating, that it'll open up the rest of the country, there'll be regional integration, there'll be so many economic benefits to having that road. Peter will be saying, well, we have other roads at the moment that go through the southwest, through to the southeast. There are other ways people can get to those areas, and you save that 1 trillion and put it to more pressing things. Meanwhile, do palliative repairs and complete the existing roadworks and put that 1 trillion into security, put it into inflation, put it into education, put it into health, other areas that are crying. In other words, a coastal road is not the most important thing at this point in time. Some will agree with him, some won't agree with him. Of course, it's a bit of concern that, can we afford, if they finish it in 8 years, good. Can we afford to wait the 30 years that he's saying it will take? There's opportunity cost, what you put down now to benefit later, which is more beneficial to you at this point in time. So from where I sit, I think all infrastructure is good infrastructure. I think every infrastructure continues to help the populace, continues to create development. I think if you wait too long to do things, it becomes harder to do. I think it costs more, it'll take more time, the benefits will be longer to come. So if there's a political will, if there's the money, if there's all the things they need to do, right of way, they need to demolish things, if all of the elements are in place and in such a way that it will give the smallest amount of inconvenience and discomfort to Nigerians, I don't see why not.
All right, let's touch on Mr. and Mrs. this morning. And Mr. speaking says, you spent 50,000 naira on a pot of soup. Come on, honey, that's abuse of the naira. And then Mrs. responds and says, when you asked me to serve your meal with 6 pieces of meat, what do you call that? Abuse of the pot?
Everybody's abusing.
Everyone
is abusing. Everyone is abusing pot. But I mean, 50,000 may be excessive for a pot of soup, but we can't tell with the inflation of today. But 6 pieces of meat, Mr. Kilo, I tried 2 or 3.
What are you eating?
What are you eating?
And speaking about the abuse of naira, I've realized that these days now, our Nigerian parties have tried to, moderate how they spray their monies because of EFCC.
Yes, I saw a video where they were giving it a hand to the person, and another was putting it in a box, an offering box in church. Which, by the way, brings to the issue of Bobrisky. Did you hear that he has appealed his conviction, or he has appealed to the appellate court, and he's appealing the sentence? And the first thing that came to me is the sentence is the jurisdiction of the judge, is the discretion of the judge. As long as he didn't pass the minimum, he didn't pass the maximum, 6 months, 6 months, or a fine, or that all gives the judge the discretion. So I don't know what is appealing. I think lawyers just want to chop his money.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Daria Akintobi, publisher of Liquidity Today, Lekki Today, and Keja Today. Thank you for sharing your thought with us this morning.
Pleasure is all mine.
Also, remember that you can equally like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. To find out up-to-date stories, go to our website, www.vanguardindia.com, to find out more. I am Precious Chukudi.